You're listening to part two of my conversation with Dr. Stephen Snyder. In part one, we explored why sex is more than just physical. It's deeply emotional, even regressive, meaning you kind of get a little dumber and a lot happier when you were aroused. Anyway, and why the best sex often begins with an awareness and emotional presence. So in part two, we'll be diving back into this conversation. You'll get to hear about how to put all these pieces in real life, specifically about his two-step framework and simmering, which we'll talk about. You'll hear stories from couples who have put these practices into a practice, and we'll unpack how to deal with desire discrepancies in your marriage. Also, how to break free from performance pressure and how to make love worth having in what Dr. Stephen Snyder calls lazy sex or simmering. These are great topics, and here we are. Let's go to part two. Any stories from those that you've met with or couples you've worked with that went through the two-step process? What's their story like? What helped them through it?
Well, the main story that comes to mind is how I invented it,
Great.
which is I didn't really know much about mindfulness at the time, but broadly speaking, step one can be anything that you might need in order to be able to get into the moment with your partner.
Mm-hmm.
And very often it is some kind of a mindfulness experience of going from thinking and doing to awareness. When I invented it, it was being able to just express myself. And we had just had our firstborn, and my wife was totally obsessed with the baby. And like
Uh-huh.
many dads, I was feeling totally neglected.
Uh-huh.
And I found that I needed 5 minutes at bedtime to complain.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't need her to say anything. I didn't need her to do anything. All I needed her was just listen to me complain. And it worked. And it was, I just needed to get it off my chest. And she was wise enough to know she just had to listen to me. And she didn't have to
Uh-huh.
do anything about it. And she would just
Mm-hmm.
nod her head and say, yes, 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 which is the ideal way to have a conversation during step one. One has something they
Mm-hmm.
want to say, and the other person says, oh, yeah, yeah, tell me. Blah, 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 blah. You're just nodding your head and so forth. How about you? Oh,
Uh-huh.
yeah, blah, 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 blah. But you don't get into the arguments. Arguments are useless in general in couples.
Uh-huh.
But so that was how I invented it. I found that a fair number of women did better at experiencing something worthwhile during sex if they had done yoga beforehand, because that's
Mm-hmm.
something that it gets your body involved. Many people are like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It helps you settle into your body, definitely. And it's mindful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I believe that we all have an instinct for that, for cultivating awareness. We just don't develop it very much. You know, in the Bible, there's a tradition in the Jewish religion. There's Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2.
Okay.
You know, the
Uh-huh.
difference that in Genesis chapter 1, God says to mankind, male and female, he created them, and go master the world and dominate it and reproduce and do all that stuff. And that's the thinking and doing. And then in
Okay.
Genesis chapter 2 is very interesting. He breathes life into Adam. Eve hasn't been created yet from the dust of the earth. And
Right.
Adam is just looking around and he names animals and he's lonely, he's alone. He's just registering things. He's just registering feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so in if you're going to have sex, you want to be more kind of Genesis 2 than Genesis 1.
Got it.
Which is
Great.
a lot of people don't know that, and so they think, they're still thinking in terms of Genesis 1. They're thinking, okay, I got to do things. I got to make sure my partner has an orgasm. I got to make sure I have an orgasm. I got to make sure this gets done and that gets done, and they miss the point completely.
Right. So that's what you call a two-step. And there's been times when my wife
Oh,
and I,
step two, by the way, is to have sex. Yeah.
that's important.
But anyhow, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So that's good because there's times my wife and I, we just undress
Uh-huh.
and we talk.
Yeah.
And that's usually just enough. And then most often desire shows up
Absolutely.
after.
Or
And that's
inspiration shows up.
inspiration. Yeah, that's a better way of saying
Inspiration.
it.
I don't know if it always feels like desire, but it feels like inspiration. You hear some kind of voice and some kind of thing. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I like it here. I like it here.
Uh-huh.
I really do like it here.
Yes. And then sometimes it's like you don't realize it till afterwards. You look back and go, actually, that was really nice.
Yeah, yeah.
I, it was really worth being there. It was really worth being together. And that,
But the
and
other
I,
thing
I
about
like
this,
that.
along the lines of what you're saying, is as a living natural thing, you can't program it. You can't say, I'm
No,
going to
you
do
can't
this and I'm going
force
to
it.
have this experience because you don't know what your experience is going to be like. Sometimes you might be preoccupied, and all those things can color what your experience is.
Right.
So you just have to be open to the experience, whatever it is.
I'm a fan of Dr. David Schnarch's work, and he talks about the hugging to relax exercise
Hmm?
often. And it is the two-step because it's requiring you at the same time, A, learn how to settle yourself down,
Yeah.
and B, be with another person. And it's this practice. Can I settle myself down and can I be in your presence?
Yeah. Yeah.
You learn how to do that over and over. It really helps cultivate.
Which is a bit of an art. And depending on the kind of family you grew up in, it sometimes can be a little bit challenged to learn how to do that. Because
Yeah.
some people grew up in families where they saw people naturally doing that. People naturally
Mhm.
settling themselves down, representing their feelings and their needs, and figuring it out of what to
Mhm.
do with other people. And then many families where people never really saw anybody doing that.
Right. Right.
So as
Yeah,
in
yeah.
David Snarch, his big thing was differentiation, which is a tricky concept to grab hold of, which essentially,
Uh-huh.
as far as I understand it, means to be able to claim space for yourself and to be fully yourself when you're with the other person, even though your needs may be in conflict with them.
Right. Right. Which isn't easy to do,
No, it's
especially
a very tricky
uh-huh.
concept.
Yeah.
And as he often writes, it goes against what one often hears in the more hallmark version of a romance, which is like two
Right.
hearts beating as one. And I think, no,
Right.
no, no, no. Two hearts, they don't beat as one. No, that's not the way it
Uh-huh.
works.
No. But tell me also about taking pleasure versus giving pleasure, because that's also what a lot of the romance books and whatever kind of tend to get
Well,
wrong.
a lot of the sex books, they say, find
Yes.
out what your partner likes and do it.
And I can see that too, because like
There's something to
I
it.
can just imagine like let's say it's a husband luring his wife, just tell me what you want and I'll do it more, and then it becomes more
Yeah.
mechanical.
And to me, the person who expresses this point of view in the Christian community, the
Hmm.
strongest is Kevin Leman, who's an
Okay.
excellent sex author, except
Uh huh.
I have this one quibble with him. The end of his book, Sheet Music. Um,
Yes, I've read that book. Uh huh.
I think that the last line is something like, "My prayer, dear Lord, help me know what to do to please my wife tonight," or
Uh
something like that.
huh.
Uh,
Uh huh.
and I've never met the man, and I have a lot of respect for him. But I think, Kevin, no, 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 that's no. Um, you should know what kind of things she might enjoy and what kind of things she
Uh huh.
doesn't enjoy. But that's just basic knowledge. Most heterosexual women that I talk to, what really pleases them the most is the fact that they know their body delights their husband and that their husband is enjoying their body with great enthusiasm because their body is able to give him so much pleasure. And as long as he's not doing things that he knows they hate, and as long as he roughly knows what kind of touch they enjoy, they usually enjoy that a lot because it's got passion in it. And the basic thing
Right.
is that passion is selfish. And I'm affected by this of being in New York City, where most people read these books on how to pleasure your partner, and
Uh huh.
they come in, and the woman usually says, "I'm so bored because he's just trying to touch me here. And does this feel good? Does that feel good?" And I think to myself, no, no, just enjoy me. Just lose your mind a little bit. Um,
Right.
and you know, as infants, there's no such thing as generosity. Infant has no generous impulses at all. So if you're regressing towards that state, it's going to be a somewhat selfish thing. And so
Uh huh.
the balance there is to be mindfully selfish, or one might say selfishly connected, or
Hmm.
connected through mutual enjoyment of a selfish feeling. And that's really usually what feels passionate, because the usual advice of just do this to your partner, do this to your partner. People have written volumes and volumes about this. Try this, try this, try this. Often the passion is lacking.
Yeah, because it becomes mechanical and rote.
It tends to feel mechanical, and also it has a goal.
Yes.
And
Has a
anytime you put a
goal.
goal towards sex, it's just really not going to really work.
No, not at all. A while ago, my wife and I were on a drive, and I said, "Hey, We should come up with a sexy bucket list together,
Uh-huh.
which sounds like a fun idea, right? Let's come up with all these exciting, adventurous things we want to do. And in her wisdom, she's like, if we make it a goal, it's not going to be fun for me. I don't want to do it.
I think she's absolutely right.
I think
Um,
so too.
yeah, yeah. And that's nice that she had the wisdom to say that, because
Mhm.
a lot of heterosexual women in my practice, they do have things that they do think of as kind of sexual enhancers, because
Mhm.
very often many women's feeling of sexual freedom does get promoted by certain things like beauty
Yes.
or freedom in other respects, relaxation, going to a resort or something like that, or redoing the bedroom so it looks fresh and nice, all those kind of
Mhm.
things. But they're not exactly sexual. They're more having to do with making things nice, pleasing to the senses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I think if a person had a sexual bucket list, I don't think that would work very well.
No, no. So it's this idea of taking pleasure. There was a person that posted in a private Facebook group recently that said, I keep asking my wife to tell me what she wants me to do to her in bed, and she's always coming up blank and I'm getting frustrated. Therefore, he's reaching out to the group. Fellas, help me out.
Yeah.
And my response was, I don't think she wants to play air traffic controller.
Exactly. Exactly. And I
Go
would say,
down there.
which suggests that
Uh-huh.
if she's like many, many women that I talk to, she wants you to really enjoy her in a fully embodied way with genuine passion.
Mhm. Yeah.
And to enjoy her in the moment without any goals other than just to be in a state of enjoyment, which is the infantile goal.
Right.
Ideally, because to go developmentally a little further, it's like 3-year-olds at a birthday party. You just want to be eating ice cream, right? And you want everybody else to say, "Yay!" Pretty much
Yeah,
where it's at.
exactly. Right. I even appreciate how your descriptions of sexual dysfunctions are like the 3-year-old. It has a very, our sexual self has a very limited vocabulary. Can you
Exactly.
speak on that a little bit?
It knows whether it's happy or it's not, because sexual mind, the fuel is really just feeling good, feeling happy. And if there's
Mhm.
something that's not making you happy, you got to take care of it. Like, me, when my, firstborn was born, there was things that were not making me happy. And I understood intuitively that I had to take care of that. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so uh, many people try to get their sexual bodies to function under conditions where they're not feeling happy. And your
Ah.
body is just honestly saying, no, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. A classical example would be like, wedding night or something, and the guy's worried about performing, and he's so worried about performing that he's not happy, and, his body doesn't respond in the fashion that he wants it to. And the usual response to that is to try to maybe just stimulate it physically, and that never works, because you're talking to
Mhm.
a 3-year-old and you're essentially saying to the 3-year-old, come on, make it work, make it work. And the 3-year-old goes, what the hell are you talking about? I'll give you another story.
Yeah, tell me another story.
The classic is man's in bed with his wife and they're doing some kind of foreplay.
Mhm.
He's turned on, she's turned on. She says, hold on just a second. I got to go to the bathroom. What
All
does he
right.
do in bed while she's in the bathroom? Unfortunately, if he's like 99% of guys, he's handling himself and stroking himself, trying to keep himself in physical shape to take to satisfy her once she gets back from the bathroom.
Right.
Unfortunately,
Uh-huh. He's afraid he's going to lose it.
of course, unfortunately,
Uh-huh.
that is going to make him unhappy. It's going to make his body unhappy. His body is saying, "What are you doing to me? What's going on? This is not
Uh-huh.
happy. This is not happy. This is
Uh-huh.
worried. I don't like this." Instead, best practices under this, and I tell all guys this, best practices is literally check your email. Go check the weather or something, because you're not getting any kind of happy stuff at that moment when your wife is in the bathroom. And when she
Uh-huh.
comes back to the from the bathroom, expect that you will be no longer turned on. And at that point, turn to her and say, let me just hit rewind. What were we doing again? And go back and do it
Uh-huh.
again. And that's really the way to do it, because, you're not a machine that's going to perform. Instead, you're just a system that responds to whether it feels happy and sexy or not happy and sexy. And if it's not feeling happy and sexy, just leave it alone until the happy and sexy comes back.
Hmm.
That requires a little bit of faith and trust, though.
It
Yeah.
does, because you got to trust that your body will respond. It will come
As
back.
long as you just take care of listening to it and listen to whether it's
Uh-huh.
feeling turned on or not in the moment.
Which comes back to step one of the two-step. It's that
Exactly. Exactly.
being open
But
for
another
inspiration. Uh-huh.
classic situation is a couple will be having, intercourse, and the guy will experience some softening,
Uh-huh.
and he'll panic, and he'll
He'll
go,
freak out. Uh-huh.
I'm softening. I better do something. Always a mistake. I think, let me just amp up the stimulation and start going faster. And at
Mm-hmm.
that point, he softens completely and he can't have intercourse anymore. Um,
Uh-huh.
Instead, best practices is to convert intercourse into motionless intercourse,
Uh-huh.
leaving his that part of his body deep inside her where it's not going to fall out, and
Uh-huh.
say, "Hmm, you know, I think I just lost it here for a minute. Could we just go back to doing what we were doing during foreplay, but with me still inside you?" And to have the magical experience of having him become happy again and get hard again while it's inside her. And that's very
Mm-hmm.
faith building. That's very trust building. That's a
It
beautiful
is. It
experience
is.
for a guy to have.
How about for the women on the receiving side? I hear so many women taking it personally when he loses an erection.
Well, he hasn't actually completely lost it. It's just gotten a little softer. And
Uh-huh.
and he could just say, "I think I just got anxious for a moment," because um, the key concept for women is that it's usually not a problem with the accelerator for a guy. It's usually a problem with the brake. Something slammed on the
Yes.
brake, and usually it was something that had momentarily made him unhappy. He was
Mm-hmm.
thinking about a problem at work, or he was worried about his erection, which is very, very common. And that'll
Mm-hmm.
that'll really kill an erection to worry about an erection, which is very
Yep.
paradoxical, obviously, because it's not a happy thing. So the king thing to do is you say, hey, hold on just a second. So you open your mouth, which is great. Um,
Uh-huh.
and she says, whoa, he actually told me what's going on. This is great. I don't have to be guessing.
Uh-huh.
And he told me what he wanted, what he wanted. That's just very simple. This is good. Okay, he just wants to do foreplay and have and enjoy me again. Yeah, sure. What? This is good.
Uh-huh.
And so she just kind of goes with it, and then they can both experience. Hey, he kind of stayed with it, and he had a little faith and trust, and it came back. So that's
That's
best
so good.
practices in my opinion.
That's good. Good. Tell us about lazy sex. And just how'd you discover that? Was there a story behind that too?
Yeah, I had a guy who had difficulty reaching orgasm during intercourse.
Uh-huh.
It's not as famous as the opposite. The
Okay.
opposite, the guy who lasts 3 seconds, that's famous. This one is not
Uh-huh.
so famous, but it's actually fairly common. I probably see more guys with this than anybody in the world because I wrote a
Okay.
couple articles on it. People read the articles and then they, come see me by telehealth. And there was a guy who had this issue where he had trouble reaching orgasm during intercourse. And he said that he and his wife would sometimes do lazy sex. And I said, "What's lazy sex?" He said, "Well, it's where we're having intercourse and it's nice, but I know I'm not going to be able to get there. So I'll pull out and I'll give myself an orgasm while holding her. I'll give myself an orgasm with one hand while holding her with the other hand." And she
Mm-hmm.
was fine with this. And I thought to myself, one, I like lazy
Uh-huh.
because sex and sex therapy should never be a matter of hard work. So anything that's just kind of making it easier, we're not looking to build character here. We're just going for happy. So if
Yes.
that makes you happy, it's fine. And so where this comes up classically is not during intercourse, but when one partner doesn't want to have intercourse. It's a classic new parent thing. The
Mm-hmm.
father says, "Hey, how about it?" The mother says, "Are you kidding? I've had 2 kids in my arms the entire day, and I want nothing more than to have nobody touch me right now." Um,
Yes.
and he goes, "Well, how about some lazy sex?" She goes, "Yeah, sure." And so he holds her with one hand and maybe kisses her, and with the other hand gives himself an orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't have to get up and urinate afterwards, and she could just fall asleep. And it's certainly a lot better than, frankly, what the default is in many marriages where the guy goes off in the bathroom and does it. It's much better to keep all the good
Uh-huh.
stuff where you have your partner's scent and the warmth and the sheets and the togetherness and everything. And
Right.
it's easy. It's easy. So it's just easy. Now, when I tell patients about this, couples in my office, there are two extremes of reaction. One extreme is, "Oh, yeah, we do that all the time. We never could have had 3 kids without it." And the other extreme is people look at me like I've got three heads.
Uh-huh.
Because, some people really, it's really kind of an strange thing to hear that after you're married, you have license to touch your own body in bed. Um,
Right.
and so, sometimes it's worth bringing up with couples, that it is something that people do sometimes do because it becomes a little more difficult to negotiate sex in a marriage if it's binary. If you're either going to be
Mhm.
having sex or not having sex. If
Yes.
there are points in between, one is lazy sex, which is an easy way to square the circle, and it's an escape from the binary. Or the other great escape from the binary, which I recommend for all couples, no matter who you are, is what I call in the book simmering, which is
I was hoping we'd talk about this, and we'll end on this
yeah,
concept. It's so good.
which is to enjoy the fact that your partner excites you and to enjoy that arousal, that momentary regression as a good for its own sake without any expectation that it's going to lead to sex or even with the full knowledge that it's not going to lead to sex. For instance, as you're rushing out the door in the morning to take a minute and to hold your partner passionately and kiss them and feel legit excited, knowing that
Uh-huh.
it's not going to lead to sex, or if you're both exhausted and you're not up for sex, you just got to get to sleep, but you want to take 1 minute and just have a passionate hold and kissing and feel excited and go to sleep excited. And in the 21st century, people have sex a lot less often than they used to. Used to be 2 or 3 times a week for most couples in their 20s and 30s. Now, once a week is fairly routine. And if
Uh-huh.
you're having sex once a week, that's really a minimum for most couples to keep an erotic connection going. And if you're doing that in between the one from the next week, you should be doing a fair amount of simmering. So I'd
Mhm.
say anytime you kiss your partner would be an occasion where you might think about simmering them, especially if they understand that doesn't necessarily have to lead to sex. But it can just be one of these things. It's not on the binary, it's somewhere in between. And it creates an erotic climate in a relationship where the payoff in terms of good sex later on can be very, very impressive. So I'm a big believer in the simmering. A lot of women worry that if they simmer with their husbands, the husband is going to get erect. And then what are they
Uh-huh.
going to do? Because they worry if
Well,
he got erected, they have to do something to relieve him of it. And I always tell women, I'm a guy, it's not a painful state of affairs to be erect. It actually feels good. We like it. It's okay. We could do that. I mean, maybe if you're 15, it's a trouble. But for most guys in their 20s and 30s, it's fine.
that's good. To think to themselves, if I get it up, I have to get it down.
Exactly, exactly.
And
Which
that's
is
not a helpful
which
approach.
is which is which is understandable. They might feel that way because the genders don't exactly know what it's like to be the other gender and probably will never
Mm.
know. So a woman doesn't know
Mhm.
what it's like to have an erection or to lose an erection. And so she may just need a little reassurance that it's okay. I get hard and then fall asleep, lose the erection. I'm perfectly satisfied. I just
Right.
felt good getting hard.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't mean I need to do
Yeah.
anything. Or as I say in the book, penises sometimes get pressed into service doing things.
Uh,
But they're really at their best when they're just allowed to just be. A guy is
yeah.
hard. It's like a dog wagging its tail. It has no purpose at
Uh-huh.
all necessarily in the moment. It just indicates that he's happy to see you. And you take it as a compliment. It's no pressure to do anything. It doesn't mean you have to relieve him of it because it's not causing him any pain.
You're right. And
Okay.
it's not your responsibility to relieve it.
Exactly. Exactly. If
Right.
he wants to have sex, he could always propose that. If you don't want to have sex, you could always, tell him, how about some lazy sex, which is fine. I don't love the thing of women being under pressure to, give a man an orgasm various ways if they're not really feeling excited. That's kind of a drag for them. I far prefer to have the guy just do it themselves while they're enjoying you.
Yeah.
Now,
Or at
not everybody
least
may agree. I mean, some people out in the audience may think I have three heads, but that's what makes the world go round.
or at the least, let's make a sexual relationship or an encounter where we're both happy to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you go to Disneyland. You don't have to ride, I don't know, Space Mountain in
Right.
order to have a successful Disneyland trip. There's
Exactly.
lots of other things you can do at various levels of intensity that you can
Absolutely.
also enjoy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the bottom line is, if there's something you're not really enjoying, by all means, don't do it. This
Mm.
comes up with oral sex all the time. People say I got to
Yeah.
give my partner oral sex. I go, no, 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 don't give your partner oral sex. It should be taking it. You should be taking oral sex. It should be for you. Because if you're giving them oral sex, they've all got to be thinking, well, is this really working for me? Am I going to be able to have an orgasm? How long is this going to take? Are they going to get tired? If they know you're doing it because you're just doing it for you, you're just taking it because who they are, their body just naturally turns you on, then you don't have to worry at all. for however
Right.
long it goes on for. It's just for them, and it doesn't have to have any goal at all. It could just be a source of delight. On the other hand, if doing oral sex to your partner really doesn't turn you on, usually tell people to think twice about doing it. You shouldn't
Right.
shouldn't just do it because it's something your partner enjoys. Do something else your partner enjoys.
Mhm.
But
That's
again, that
such
may be
good
a
advice.
minority viewpoint. I may get some heat for that, but it's what makes the
Th
world go
that's
round.
that's a great viewpoint because you want to create sexual experiences where, after you're done, you look back like, "I was happy to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
It felt good. That
glad."
was a happy
Yeah,
thing.
it felt good. That was a exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. There's a couple I worked with a long time ago. He wanted more sex in the marriage, and it's not that she didn't like sex, but it was always a production to her. It meant she needed to shower
Yeah.
first, so she knew she was clean for getting into it. It meant changing into lingerie. It it was at least a half hour, maybe an hour of dedicated time.
Yeah.
And it's not like she didn't like orgasms or had difficulty orgasms, but that wasn't they used to think that was the measure of good sex. Did she have an orgasm? Did he have an orgasm? Oh, good. Now we're done. Now we
Yeah.
can be over. And then afterwards, there was the cleanup and then maybe a second shower. It was just so involved.
So what did you tell him to
And
do?
I told him to lower the bar, make it easy. What is the littlest that you can do and still enjoy each other? I taught him about simmering. I taught him about enjoying just being together. What and it might be look like lazy sex sometimes, and it might be using a vibrator sometimes. It might mean just being naked and just cuddling and just enjoying each other. But that's the heart of it. Just enjoy being together.
Because
Make it a
otherwise,
happy thing.
especially a heterosexual couple can feel like they're called on to do this procedure, which is a validation of themselves as a heterosexual couple. And it usually involves the
Yeah.
penis going into the vagina, both people having orgasms, and it's just it's a fair amount of burden, I think, on a heterosexual couple.
Mm. Yeah, that's good. This has been an excellent conversation.
Well, I'm
I
glad. I'm
this is
glad.
your wealth of knowledge. This is great, and this is a fantastic book. I'm holding it up in my hand. If you're watching the video of this, it's
Oh,
called Love Worth Making.
and just see if I can make a comment. Love worth
Yeah.
making, that's my title. It's love making with the
Okay.
word worth stuck in the middle. That other stuff that's how publishers talk. How to
Gotcha.
have ridiculously great sex in a long lasting relationship. I would say have good sex. That sounds like too much of a goal to me.
Can you talk about that just for a moment? You talk about in your book the scale of 0 to 100, 100 representing this absolute peak, absolute possible of intensity
Yeah.
in a sexual experience, and the standard you recommend couples to shoot for in the 0 to 100.
Okay. So it's the arousal scale. How
Yes.
aroused are you getting? In other words, how much IQ points are you losing? How dumb and happy are you getting? Uh,
Uh-huh.
For most people, a 20 is the minimum at which their genitals are actually going to function well.
Mhm.
But if he gets hard and she gets wet and they jump into having intercourse, for most couples
At a 20.
at a 20, it's not going to do very well
Mhm.
because you haven't lost enough IQ points to make it really something special. So even though you're hard and she's wet, you wait till you get to a 40. If you could cruise at a 40, then you're more chance of having one of those experiences where you say, "Hey, this really take me someplace special,"
Uh-huh.
as opposed to
But
just doing the minimum.
that's good. And I also like your viewpoint. It's not about getting to a 60 or 80 or 100 either. 40 is good enough.
Oh, 40 is wonderful. For
Forty is
if
good
you're
enough.
40 on a
Yeah.
steady basis, yeah, it's nice. And every once in a while it gets a little higher. That's terrific. But there are kind of two schools of thought among sex therapists. One is that you should really go for mind-blowing sex and how every couple can achieve mind-blowing sex. And I'm a little skeptical of that, frankly.
Uh-huh.
I'd say let's have good sex where you lost some IQ points and it felt good and made you feel good about yourselves. You're good. You're good. Nothing to worry
Uh-huh.
about. Somebody
That's
said
good.
that if you could translate the whole book into one sentence, it would be, "It's going to be okay."
That's good. Very good. Very good. It's going to be okay. Great. Where can people go to learn more about you, your work, your book,
If you
things like
just
that?
Google "Love Worth Making" or you look for it on Amazon or anywhere the books are sold, we've sold almost 100,000 copies, so it's done pretty well, and we've been very gratified by the response. And the next book is, most people who buy sex books, you're in the field, you're a bit of an exception. Most people who buy books about anything having to do with relationships, most are women. There's some men who buy it. And so most of the people who buy it are heterosexual women. The next book is also going to be primarily audience be heterosexual women. It's going to be called Men Worth Keeping.
Okay.
And it's going to get into the gender divide. There's some things that are gendered in this book, which I got a lot of trouble for because, you're not supposed to talk about gender in the whole culture these days. But I found it very, very relevant. And the next book is going to be even more relevant about ways in which men and women really don't understand each other and how that leads to trouble and what to do about it.
That's so good.
But the current book is Love Worth Making, and you can find it anywhere. And if you do Love Worth Making, you'll find me.
Very good. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Please share it, along with our apps, Intimately Us and Just Between Us, with your married friends. I promise they will thank you for life. If you want a more meaningful, sexual, and intimate connection in your marriage, I invite you to check out my Get Your Marriage On program. Over 100 couples have said this program packs tremendous value and has helped their intimacy grow to the next level. Now, go get your marriage on.